In this episode of the Powder Coder podcast, we feature an up-and-coming coder, Jase Kaser. I stumbled upon his blog one day and discovered a fountain of inspiration like no other. If you're looking for solace in the life of powder coating, this young man lends you a reprieve. He shares pearls of wisdom about the subtleties of coding from a self-reliant mindset, and covers everything from lessons learned in technical problem solving to managing customers and employee expectations. I call him the Ralph Waldo Emerson of powder coating. I hope you will call him a friend. Follow along as he melds his life experience with growing his powder coating biz. Get ready to level up your powder coder game. Welcome to episode 10. I'm Kim Scott, your host of the Roscoe Powder Coder podcast, where we interview influencers in the industry and cover trending topics so powder coders can effectively learn and grow their business. Today, we're reaching out to interview Jase Kaser from Kazer Blasting and Coating. He's out of Nebraska, and I was attracted to his story as a powder coder, or the wife of a powder coder, because he has an approach on his blog that addresses the subtleties of coatings, the struggles with it, learning the business, and addressing his customers' expectations. And I found it very inspirational. I wanted to bring this podcast to you today because I found it's almost like it's a training manual and a journal all in one. So I'm happy to welcome Jase Kaser to the show. Welcome, Jase.
Hi, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, now I found you, Tim Pennington, so I'm just going to give a shout out to Tim Pennington of the Finishings and Coatings online magazine. If you don't follow Tim, he usually is giving featured focuses and addresses all kinds of coating content in the coatings and finishing, from powder coatings to liquid coatings and beyond. So if you don't follow Tim, or you don't get his email in your inbox, go ahead and head over to his Finishing and Coatings magazine online. Just Google it and you will find, you can sign up to get his newsletter. But recently, Kazer got featured in his magazine, and I enjoyed reading what was said in the magazine. It was just a feature of, they were just featuring you as a coder. But there was one thing that really brought an attention to me. It was just an introduction to your business and stuff. But I really found something that you said that was really compelling, and that you're grateful for your customers for the positive reviews and stuff. But later on, you said, the more transparent and communicative we are, the more satisfied our customers are likely to be. And that's the one reason why I wanted to bring you on the show, because I do think that there are barriers to market and communicate, and especially when communicating to your customers the subtleties of powder coating, and the struggles that you have as a powder coater to educate customers, or shed light on the process. But before we dive deep into that, I want to know, how long have you been powder coating in the industry, or how did you get started? Talk me through it.
Okay, well, my parents started Kazer Painting Incorporated before I was born, back in 1987. And that started as a residential painting company. So it started off with my dad painting houses. And then it kind of grew from there and went into more commercial painting. So like new construction hospitals and schools and office buildings. In 2004, my mom and dad added a blasting facility that was just adjacent to the building that they already had. And so they started blasting and then doing, I call it liquid coating. It's still painting, but all the painting was done inside a booth, like high performance industrial type coatings. And then in 2014 is when we finally started powder coating. And so when I was younger, growing up in high school, I always worked in the summers, usually in the Kazer painting shop, staining and finishing wood. And then I would also work in the blast shop a little bit, like in the blast cabinet, or if our main blaster was gone or on vacation, I would get in there and try to wrangle the blast hose as a young middle schooler or high schooler, which can be challenging, just because that's probably the most physically demanding job that we have. And then when we started the powder coating, that was 2014. So I was in college at that time. I had just finished my, fourth year. It took me 5 years. I went to the University of Nebraska-Lincoln for mechanical engineering. So I've always been interested in setting up equipment and how it all works, how it goes together. And so I was interested in helping get all the powder coating stuff set up. So over that summer between my fourth and fifth year, so going into my senior year of college, we started putting up the powder coating oven and booth, and I sprayed our first parts. And then we hired one guy to help run it, and then I finished my senior year of college. And then I was getting right to the end of my senior year. I was trying to decide if I wanted to go to graduate school or if I wanted to just be done with school and have my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and just go in the family business. And it was a tough decision. I was going back and forth because I had done a lot of undergraduate research in engineering, and that particular professor really wanted me to go on and be a grad student and get my master's and get my PhD. But the powder coating was really taking off, and Dad really needed my help in the sense that, like, he was running the Kazer painting, so the commercial and residential painting, also the blasting, and then the powder coating. And he could run all three of them, but it was like he was the limiting factor because you can't be in three places at once all day, every day. And so ultimately it was my decision, but they really needed help. So I was like, you know what? I helped put all the powder coating stuff together, and I'm getting really kind of tired of school. I'm not sure if I will use a master's or PhD, because in the long run, I kind of wanted to get into the family business someday and hopefully take it over. So I decided that a bachelor's degree was enough, and then went and started helping and jumped right in helping the powder coating right away on the floor. And then since then it's grown. So that was 2015. That would have been when I started working out full time. That's been 5 years ago now, a little over 5 years, because the summer of 2015. And we've grown a lot since then. Powder coating has been our fastest growing division ever since that time. And so, yeah, that's where we're at now. Now, instead of being on the floor and doing all the work, I'm mostly in the office, trying to organize all the work and get all of the logistical stuff done so all of our team members can focus on their craft. Everybody's really good at what they do. And so it's my job to get all their obstacles out of the way so they can just do their job. If our sprayers can come in and spray all day, and our washers can come in and pre-treat all day and not have to worry about equipment breaking and running out of supplies and materials, then they can do their job a lot better. So that's what I focus on. I'm mostly scheduling and ordering, being a purchaser and quoting and dealing with customers. I still like to get on the floor when I can, because that's usually the funnest part, is when you can just get in and work and not have any interruptions.
Yeah.
And get sweaty and stuff. That's fun.
Yeah. Get lost in the work and just draw, I always was like that with painting. It just, let myself work without having any, distractions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that, the logistics is hard, it's not that easy.
It definitely is.
you have to kind of know it all in order to understand how to logistically set something up. And it sounds like you guys do it all then, like liquid and powder. You're all both sides.
Correct. Yeah. So we have our blast and liquid booths are indoor. They're 18 foot wide, 15 foot tall by 50 foot long. So we can do like concrete trucks and dump trucks. We do a lot of the 40-foot shipping containers for construction companies. They like to use those as job trailers. So we have that in one of our buildings, and then our other building is fully powder coating. So.
And as a family business, are you the only family, the son, or are there other siblings involved?
I have a younger brother. He's not involved in the family business. He is also a mechanical engineer, and he decided to take an engineering job right out of college. It was a really good job, and so he's still doing that right now. And I don't know that he has much desire to come into the family business. Maybe someday, but he really likes the engineering job he has right now. So that's kind of where he's at. But yeah, I do have a younger brother.
So do you and your dad, I'm assuming your mom and dad seem like they're young enough, they're still involved in the business, or are trying to get more hands off?
So I would say, they still run the Kazer painting side. So, and then what I say I run is the Kazer blasting and coating side. So the Kazer painting is the commercial and residential painting, like I talked about. My dad's still there every day. He's there from, just like I am, from 5 a.m. till 5 p.m. And so he's doing the day-to-day office running of the painting side. And my mom does all of the accounting and bookkeeping for all of our divisions. So they're still there every day. They are getting to the point where they want to slow down a little bit. But as far as like the day-to-day work and decisions in the blasting and powder coating, I pretty much handle all that now. And it's been interesting. I haven't thought about it much, but when I reflect on it, as I'm surprised how quickly my mom and dad just kind of let me run with it. Like, as I started going, my dad is he's also very hands-on. He likes to be involved. He's very particular, but he's let me make my own mistakes. If we have a disagreement, he's usually the one that will back down, and he'll just kind of let me learn the hard way sometimes. Other times he'll step in and say, no, I know that I did this before and this way isn't going to work. But they do a really good job of just letting me go ahead and run with it. And obviously when there's really big decisions to make, I involve them, and we all three talk about it and come up with a good decision. But I've never felt like that I don't really feel like their son when I'm at work, I guess. So when I'm at work, I call them Jay and Sherry. I don't call them mom and dad.
Yeah. I think that helps.
It doesn't feel like it's mom and dad watching over me at work. It just feels like we have good working relationship, and we work alongside each other really well and complement each other, because I look at stuff a lot differently than they do, because I'm younger, went to engineering school, and I'm involved with I'm interested in technology and trying to do everything faster and on the cloud and more remote, and using technology to help us go faster. And they're, used to doing it I don't necessarily want to say old school, but that older way, but they have all the experience too. So I might have a lot of new ideas that can help, but then when I run them by them, they can give me their input, like, okay, that might work, but don't forget about this, this, and this, because they're thinking about things that I don't think about. So.
That you haven't even, because you don't have as much experience. Yeah, it makes
right.
So do you think that what sets Kazer apart from other powder coaters in your area?
I would say our quality. We pay a really, really close attention to detail, and in general, our feedback from our customers is that our quality is typically better than other places. And going along with that, we're usually more expensive. We hear that as a lot of feedback too, but I would say definitely our quality. We're very particular about everything that we do, and from start to finish. So there's a lot of intricacies in blasting and coatings that the general customer doesn't necessarily realize at the surface. I think when it comes to any kind of coating, everybody kind of thinks like it's just painting. I can do it myself. I can go to Menards and get a aerosol can and spray paint my car parts myself, which you can, but it's a lot different, and there's a lot more to it than people think. So when it comes down to it, it's hard to explain to customers, and that's kind of when we do our blog and stuff. It's hard to explain to customers when they're coming in to drop parts off or get a quote, what's all involved and all the steps that we're taking to make sure that their coating's going to look good, but then also have longevity. Because since all the substrates that we coat in the Kazer blasting and coating side, it's all metal. And so we're going for corrosion protection is what's really important.
Right.
And obviously everybody, when it comes to powder coating, we do a lot of general public stuff, so lawn furniture and car parts and all kinds of stuff like that. So they're more looking for the aesthetics, but if it's going outside, it's really important to have, make sure the substrate's prepped properly with the right blast and pre-treated properly with the right chemicals before you get either paint or powder coating over the top to make sure that they have a good long-lasting finish. So I think all of that attention to detail sets us aside from everybody else, but that's hard to convey to customers, really hard.
Yeah, I think that's what I found so compelling about your blog. And just for the listeners, you can actually find the blog at Kazer, Kaser, blasting.com/blog. And I feel like I guess when I started to read it, it's an ode to powder coating. I kind of thought, wow, this could be a training manual for the subtleties of powder coating for both consumers or your customers and your employees. It's a journal. It's a journey. It's I don't know, your writing style intrigued me, I guess. I don't know if you're doing all of the writing, but I think all of the recent ones that I've read, how do you get inspired to write? Is it something happens with a customer or an event happens at work and then that's the impetus?
It's a combination of things that if somebody takes the time to go through and read all of our blogs, they might be able to tell that some of them are a little more passionate and ranty than others. So sometimes it's a frustration that triggers me to record it. Other times it's just I want to help educate about a certain thing. We really try to be active on social media on all forms, and blogging is just one of them that we do on our website. And I work with, we have a couple team members that help me with that. I can't take all the credit for writing the blogs. The content is definitely coming from me. And typically the process that we use to do the blogs is I'll record myself talking, just kind of like we're doing right now. And then I give that to Chloe. I'll give her a shout out, and she's the one who watches my videos, and then she writes it out. So she's using all of my words and context, but she is a very, very good writer and has a good way with words to get some of my long-winded rants down onto the page and actually make sense. So she does a very good job of that. I can't take credit for the physical writing, but the topics just kind of come up. So there's a lot of things that happen on a daily basis, and usually it's just something that happened that particular day. I try to just, when I'm thinking about wanting to do any type of social media content, I just try to think about, what happened today instead of trying to make up something special. That's usually hard to do. It's easier to just kind of go off of what's on my mind, what I'm dealing with. If a ton of customers call in and ask the same question in a day, or I feel like I'm answering the same thing over and over again, or explaining the same thing over and over again, then I just feel like we need to make a blog about it.
Yeah, that was, that's pretty much how I got started. Someone suggested to me one day when we first launched our website, oh, well, you need a blog, and I'm like, oh God, what's that? Like, really? And, it was just quite simply put, what is the most asked question when somebody answers the phone? What is the question they ask the most? And that's how it all started. And lo and behold, like a year later, after that blog post was posted, we kind of reached #1 in Google. And then it kind of just took off from there. And that's when I realized we were actually writing to a consumer-based market rather than to other powder coaters or, to any other audience, But I think what I like about what you're doing is, for those that have thought, oh, I need a blog too, or I need a video log or a YouTube channel or this and that. I think what I like best about your approach is it seems simple. You're just recording yourself. You're dealing with the day-to-day. Yes, you have help along the way. You've got people recrafting or redrafting the message, but it doesn't have to be. It can be crude. It can be like crude in the sense that it's non-processed and still be a great blog or a great vlog in addressing to your customer or to your Instagram audience or Facebook, whatever. It doesn't have to be complicated. And I guess that the way that the writing or the blog that I just don't feel that it's pressed or not the word, that's not the word I want to reach, but like, it's not a forced thing. You know what I mean? It's something that happens organically, and it can be just that for everybody, because as you know, with every job, you're creating content, whether it's a tough job or an easy job or a shiny, pretty color job or a difficult customer job or any of the different, that's the beauty of powder coating, is that you're constantly creating content to write about, because with every new project is content.
Yeah. And like the reality of the situation is, and I'm sure you can attest to this, is like we're running a small business. So I have a lot of responsibilities that I have to attend to keep the business running. So I don't really have time to sit there and think up these very intricate plans about what we're going to do on social media and what I need to write a blog about. So it just kind of happens on the fly because I just simply don't have that much time to dedicate to a long drawn out strategy for it. It's just whatever's popped into my mind. That's all I have time to go with. So I just go with it.
Right. And so we talked earlier about using software technology and apps. Can you break down for us, like, are you using specific apps to help you, or are you just going straight to the platforms themselves to kind of maybe dive a little deeper in there? Is there a specific app you're using or things you like?
Not particularly. I mean, it's just, we use a lot of spreadsheets, so like Excel and Google Sheets. We just like to keep track of what we're doing, and then scheduling. You could also do that in any type of spreadsheet program. We like Google Sheets because that's, on the internet and on the cloud. So you can access it from multiple places. You can access it from a phone or a tablet or, the computer in the powder shop or the computer in my office instead of having to be at one particular place.
Yeah, I agree. We use Google a lot too. But when you're recording, are you recording just on your phone, or how does that work out?
Oh, for content, yeah, I just record I'm just using my phone. I've tried, they have those kind of like selfie stick things that'll I think it's called a gimbal. It'll self-balance the phone. And I've used that a little bit, but it boils down to time. So the people that help me with the social media, they like that and they want me to use it because it balances the phone better and gives you a better video. But I'm like, man, it takes me 30 minutes to get that thing set up and working right. And I don't have that. So I'm just going to go with my phone. Like if I have a full day, like a Saturday or something that I can dedicate to it, then I'll get off some tripods and set some stuff up and get the lighting right. But otherwise, no, I'm just using my cell phone. I mean, nowadays I'm used to it because I grew up with cell phones, but they can do almost everything. It's basically like a computer in your pocket. So if you have a pretty new phone, you can pretty much take pictures, video, record yourself, and then all that content is good enough to put on social media.
Yeah, I've struggled with the gimbal thing too. I maybe someday. It's just one more thing to add to my list of many things. Yeah. Okay. Well, this is I encourage everybody to some of the titles from your blog are. I mean, some of the content that you've brought about, and you're putting out quite a bit of content. I mean, you've put out something at least once or twice a week here in the last. So you've got lots of content to read through, and I like it because, you know, you could be struggling with a project as a powder coater, and reading your stories. Here's one, 3 rules of training. I thought that was very valuable. That's the most recent one that you've put up. And, you know, you're a general manager at Kazer, and I'm imagining this is, you know, you make it sound so easy, but I know it probably took you a little while to figure this stuff out. And here you are, just right here, super easy. You've got 3 different points that that you're training, you know, that you're using that other powder coaters could read to figure out how to work through some of their training issues as well. Like there's never enough over explaining, figuring out the progression of a job, and investing in your time wisely and stuff. And I think this is the valuable stuff that I think powder coaters should be reading on a regular basis, and stuff, you know. Does it seem to help you to get it out?
I mean, all of that's the stuff like that last article that we wrote, that's a little more, I would say, in depth or more process oriented and less about like coding a part or something. That's just been kind of I've learned that over time. I definitely manage differently. I think we have a blog about pretty recently. I don't think it's that one, but it's one right before that, about how when I first started, I thought the best way to get my point across was yelling and intimidating. And I learned pretty quickly that wasn't. So it's been dry trial now, really. And so throughout the years, we've kind of, and I know that for me to say that, you're probably thinking, yeah, but you're still super young. But, you know, it's been 5 years for me, so that's a big portion of my life. And that's just kind of what we've learned. We finally have gotten to a point where the team members that we have now have been there for a while. We used to have pretty high turnover, and we still do. It seems like when you're trying to fill a new position, you just got to be prepared. You know, the closer that you can keep yourself to reality, and not get too high, not get too low when things are going bad, then it's, you know, it goes a little bit better. So when it comes to training and hiring, we try to just be realistic, and just, instead of, you know, when you're really busy and you're hiring people, you can get frustrated really easy, or really hope that someone's going to do really good because you got a big project coming up, and you need a couple more really good people that know exactly what they're doing and have experience. But a lot of the time, even if they do have experience, they're not going to do it exactly the way you know your particular team does it. Everybody kind of has their own ins and outs. So that's where we kind of came up with the over explaining, because when you have someone that you feel like has experience and you just assume that they know most of that, and I didn't really come across in the article because it's hard to put, but I can put it better now that we're doing an interview in words, is that a lot of my mechanical background comes from, I used to race when I was younger. So when I was 9 years old, I started dirt track racing, and I raced all the way until I was 25. It's just recently that we stopped doing that. So I'm really mechanically inclined and used to what every tool's called and what the size of bolts are and just looking at something and telling if that's going to hold or if that's going to break or if that's going to work or not, just because I've been around mechanical stuff my whole life, ever since I was little. And so we have some team members that come in that maybe have powder coating experience or maybe don't. But I take for granted that they don't necessarily have that background. They haven't used all the tools I have. They haven't been around all the mechanical stuff I have. So in the beginning, I used to not really explain that stuff and just assumed like they knew exactly what I was talking about. Or, you know, if you go to hang a really heavy thing, a really heavy part, and you're hanging it with a forklift because it's too heavy for 2 or 3 people to lift it, so you have to get the forklift under it. It's just natural for me to go, okay, we're going to need some like really thick hooks, probably big chain to hang this, because if nobody can lift it, little tiny hooks aren't going to hold it. It's going to fall. And if someone doesn't have experience with mechanical type stuff and being around things like that, they simply don't know. And it's not because it's no fault to them. They just don't have experience with it. And so those are the little things that sometimes seem obvious to some people just because of their experience. But you still got to train on it. And we found that it's easier to over-explain and keep saying the same thing and keep explaining stuff and let the person roll their eyes at you and be like, okay, yeah, I know, you told me, I know that. Of course I know that. It's better to do that than assume they know something and then something goes wrong, or more importantly, like someone gets hurt because of a safety thing because someone didn't know.
Yeah, I think, well, you know, it's easy. I think most people think, well, I've told you once, how many more times do I have to tell you, you know, but not everybody, well, I mean, I have a daughter that has a, you know, learning issue, and, you know, it did take multiple times, but once she got it in her head, it was in there for good. You know what I mean? It was just this overcoming this learning curve. And then once she learned the task or whatever, it never leaves it, right? And it is hard to adapt to your training to multiple levels, right? And I mean, one thing that was said in this blog called Busting the Myth of Self-Direction, the intensity level ranges from moderate flurry to fog of war. I love that, because that's exactly what happens in a very busy powder coating shop. You know, it can, you know, it's this hurry up and wait, and then once it's in the oven, then you're sitting there waiting for the timer to ding, you know what I mean, kind of thing. So
absolutely.
You know, how do you keep your people busy during that slow time? Do they, what are some strategies there? Because I'm sure a lot of powder coaters do have this kind of busy and then hurry up and wait. And what do they do with their customer? I mean, not their customers, but their employees. What do you do?
So we're lucky enough that we have a big enough shop and we have enough equipment now that we try to keep a pretty good flow going. And we have enough people that, you know, someone can be hanging, someone can be in the wash bay pre-treating, someone can be spraying, and then someone can be packing. And so as long as the flow is going pretty well and I do a good enough job at scheduling it, it usually can kind of flow out. And obviously you have to have enough work to be able to do that. But if you have enough parts there, usually there's always something for someone to be doing. We try to keep someone spraying all day long. And we usually do a good job of that. And so usually there's always parts in the oven. There's always parts cooling down. And there's parts that are cold enough that can actually be being packaged. And so as those are being packaged and carts are being opened up, then we just hang the next job and it just keeps going in an assembly line. It doesn't always work that smooth. The hardest, probably most stressful job across all 3 of our divisions is running the shop floor in the powder coating shop, just because you have to be thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead of everybody, because you're right. All of a sudden somebody like, okay, I'm done with that. What do you want me to do now? And it does happen, or we call it the flow. So how things are flowing through the shop, it gets backed up or messed up or turned around, and now you're waiting. You know, there is stuff in the oven, and there's no carts to pack, and so now you're sitting there waiting. So we just try to keep everybody busy as best we can. And if you have, if you're super busy and you have plenty of work, usually it's not an issue. You can, start prepping the next thing or something like that. But sometimes it does get challenging. I spent a lot of time scheduling. Normally I'll schedule based on due date when the customers need it. And then I look back in kind of group by color, which most powder coaters do. And then I'll look through to try to see, like, okay, how's this actually going to flow through our shop? Like, are we going to have we can't spray 3 things in a row that take 3 hours each to spray, because obviously if we're going to have a guy in there spraying on one thing for 3 hours, eventually everything's going to come to a standstill.
Right.
So you have to be careful of that. And, sometimes it just happens. If you got a lot of big stuff and you have to spray a lot of big stuff, and it out on the shop floor, it kind of slows down a little bit. But then all of a sudden the next day, it's funny because sometimes, the mood on the shop floor is like kick back and relax a little bit. It doesn't happen much, but when the flow gets backed up, it will. And then it's like everybody thinks like, oh, we're ahead finally and we're doing all right. And then by middle of the next day, it's like a war zone over there, and trying to, now you can't get enough help on the shop floor to get stuff packaged and hung back up. So it just kind of flips back and forth. It can be stressful, but once, it seems like the newer team members get really stressed out by it. But after you've been there for a while, you just kind of get used to it. You learn to appreciate the days where it gets a little bit slower, because, the next 8 days are probably going to be super, super busy and fast, and you're not going to have time to sit down.
Yeah, I would agree that that's probably more of an owner's perspective too. Like when you're an owner or you're a single powder coater with maybe 1 or 2 employees, like you're used to that just because that's your business, right? Mm-hmm. But how do you convey that to make sure that that you have conveyed that thinking through your team as well? And I like this one called scheduling backward instead of forward. And I think that's what you were kind of talking about earlier, right? Is you have to think about the end result first before you can figure out all the different steps in between to make that deadline.
Yeah, so I'll answer the one about our team members trying to communicate with them. So recently we transferred a new guy into running our powder coating shop floor. The one guy that had run it has ran it since we started. He was the first person we hired. And we kind of moved him to more of a production manager across both the blasting and powder coating shop. So he's helping me more everywhere now instead of just on the powder coating shop floor, as far as kind of like overseeing things. And so we've been training the other guy that's learning how to run the floor in the powder coating shop. He's been with us for a couple of years and is really good at all the tasks, hanging, packing, spraying, washing. So he's very well versed in all that. But it was definitely a learning curve when he first started, having to think about the schedule and look farther forward, look farther down the schedule. And really his job now is kind of think about what everybody else is doing in the powder coating shop instead of worrying himself about doing the physical work. And it was a learning curve. After the first week, he's like, wow, I didn't realize how much thinking that you guys do on a daily basis, thinking ahead, not thinking about what we're actually doing today. So it's a lot of talking in the mornings before we get started and kind of explain like, hey, this is how I would do this. Don't forget about this. If something gets backed up or something, think about a few things that can be a safety valve for you, so somebody can remember we have this rework that we just set off to the side last week, but we still got to get all that resanded, so that could be something somebody can do. So to communicate it to the team, it's difficult, and they kind of have to learn by trial and error a little bit. Like, so they're not, until they start making the mistakes themselves and realize like, oh, that's why we don't like to don't want to do it in that order. you can tell them that as much as you want, but until they experience it themselves, then they really get it. And then the scheduling and backwards instead of forwards, that kind of comes from my frustration of that. And I think you probably can attest to this, and anybody in the coating or finishing industry can, is that we're the last people in the manufacturing chain, typically. And we're the ones that are responsible for making the parts look nice and last a long time looking nice. Yet we get the littlest amount of time to do it, typically, because we're right at the very end. So we're the last thing before the due date, before the customer gets it. And so all of the mess ups and extra days have already been used up by the time it gets to us, typically, or any coder, it's already past due. So you can't get it done fast enough. And that frustrates me, because it's like, it has to be perfect when it leaves our shop, because that's what everybody sees right away. The customer's if there's a nick in the finish, they're frustrated with whatever it is, even if that doesn't necessarily mean that the part's not functional anymore. They're just frustrated that there's a scuff, or, you missed this weld, or you missed this corner. And so my proposal and line of thinking on that is like, why don't we schedule backwards, not forwards? Why does it that customers go to a metal manufacturing place with an idea, and they make the prints up, and they come up with what they think it's going to cost and how long it's going to take? And then, typically metal companies are quoting the powder coating for their customers. So like metal companies will ask me, hey, can you quote this? And I do. And so they add that into their quote to their customer. And my thought is like, and it's totally different. It would be odd at first to do it, but why doesn't the end customer come to the powder coater first and say, hey, this is what I want it to look like in the end, and this is what I want, and this is my due date. So then as a coder, you're like, okay, this is how much time we need for coating, and we start working backwards. And then I contact the metal fabrication company that we already do business with. It's just normally they contact me to help, but now I'm contacting them and saying, hey, here's a print that my customer wants this made. This is when I need you to have it done by, so I can get it powder coated and get it to my customer. Will that work? And do you have the right material? And can you get that done? And I feel like scheduling that way, you would have a better chance of hitting the due date. You'd still have difficulties, but some of that thinking comes from my engineering background, because I like building things and I'm familiar with metal manufacturing. So I feel like I could help the customer if they had questions. And maybe some powder coaters don't feel like they can do that, but I just think it would be interesting to flip it around and schedule that way instead of, I feel like the end customer would be happier, because it always seems like the end customer is frustrated that it's past due, So.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on those two valid points, because again, it just comes down to educating the customer and growing powder coating and the powder coating experience, the powder coating marketplace. I think that will be the future, because people will come to you for their personal projects and stuff too. It is kind of frustrating. I know that we've been in that same situation where we're at the end and it's just nothing but pressure, a pressure cooker situation to bring it to fruition for the end result. And then, to get back and forth between customers and the welder or the producer or whatever, I don't know, contractor, it can get kind of mucky. And I don't, I don't know what the answer is at this moment. I guess the only future I see is just training up the customer or the consumer market, that you can go to your powder coater first. I just wrote a blog post on how to paint or how to coat your gate. And, it's a landmark post. So it's something that could be featured in an online magazine or architectural magazine somehow. where it just breaks it down for if you were a homeowner, what substrate do you pick? What coatings do you pick? What, tell you about this. What is sandblasting? Why do you need it? I just kind of walk people through choosing a color, choosing a contractor, that sort of thing. And it really, you have to kind of break it out, but how do you share it with everybody? That's the key, right? Like, how do you get that out? How does the consumer find your website? That would solve a lot of problems,
Yeah, it would. And that's why we try to post as much content as we can. Like you said, we post blogs pretty regularly, but that was probably where we post the least is on our website on the blog. So we post on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram pretty much every single day. Twitter and Instagram, I think it's a little less, but Facebook and LinkedIn, we're posting every day on, and trying as much as possible to keep the content fresh. And I always want to post more. And the people that work with me on all of our content always are like, yeah, but then that means you have to make more content, Jase. I'm like, yeah, I know. And I know I don't have time, but I still want to post more. So just keep bugging me until I get you enough content so we can post more. Right. Because the more that we post, the more that it helps educate people. And then it just, hopefully, in the end, it makes our job easier. And like that article that Tim wrote on us, Tim found us because we post on LinkedIn. So I think we shared like a blog from our website on LinkedIn, but he read that and then reached out to us and said, hey, can I use that blog on my website? And we're like, yeah, you can just put a link to our website in there if you could. And then a few weeks later, then he asked to just write an article on us. So if we wouldn't have been making any kind of content and we wouldn't have been posting on LinkedIn, Tim would have never found us. So it definitely works. I mean, it takes a lot of effort and you have to put a lot of effort into it. I mean, we've been posting on social media for like 3 years now, and that was the first time that someone wanted to write a magazine article on us. So.
Yeah, well, the coatings world is huge. I mean, everybody knows that. And it can be noisy too, right? So it's hard to tease out and find these, people like you that are doing something a little trend setting or a little different or a little, I kind of get this, like, as I, navigate the coatings world, I find that, like, from an industrial perspective, many of the people that work in coatings, whether they're middle managers or pencil pushers or phone answerers or coaters, coating liquid or powder, it's kind of not much happens. It's a very slow moving animal, right? I think actually powder coatings move a little faster than just liquid coatings, because I think liquid coatings is just gigantic. I mean, we kind of just realized that a couple weeks ago when we interviewed Kevin Corson from PCI and how big they found the liquid market to be and the decorator market to be. It's just gigantic. Just because it's big doesn't mean it moves very fast, right? So it tends to be kind of on the boring side. Powder coatings in general, if you're just doing a single coat color application, that's just single coat color application. I think where the movement is happening is a lot of the creative side, whether it's blog posts or new finishes or new application styles or, artistic level kind of stuff. That's where there's a lot of movement. But it's hard when you're in such a big industry when you're doing something exciting or new or refreshing, it's hard to get people's attention to it just because it's such a big place.
Right. Yeah. And there's kind of two sides of it. And so the like Chloe, I said, she helps. And now we have a new team member that's helping Abby, helping with social media. They both really like the bright colors and the general public stuff that we do, where it's a bird bath, a lawn ornament, things like that, because those are cool to look at. People like to see those. So that's one side of, like the artistic side, like you said, and people latch onto that and like seeing more of that. And I'm more on the side, like I like the technical side. So I like, why does pre-treatment work? What chemistries work better than others? And so there's kind of two different types of consumers of like content, or just mainly two different types of people in the coating industry. There's the ones that are really focused on the aesthetic finishes, and those are usually the paint and powder companies, right? And the salespeople and everybody kind of in that world. And then there's the surface prep guys, and I would include pre-treatment with the surface prep, where that's more like nitty gritty underneath the coating, so nobody sees it. But it's still really important, probably the most important part. But that side gets a lot more technical, and I think I like that side more just because I've always been hands-on, and then my mechanical engineering degree, I understand a lot of what's happening down on the microscopic level with the chemistries and surface profiles and things like that. So I think that's why I like that side of things, because that's what I'm most familiar with. And so I like to talk about those and take pictures of that and make content of that, because I think that that's one of the most important parts, and I like to communicate that to people, because you don't see that part. It's covered up. But then, like I said, there's the other side that everybody likes to see, the nice, cool looking finish. And I like that too, but we are more industrial than we are the general public side. And so most of what we do is industrial stuff. So like if all we did was take pictures of what we were coating, for one, it's kind of a lot of the same thing over and over again, or every month we do a run of the same thing. And it's kind of bland stuff, it's gray and black and stuff like that. And every once in a while we have cool pieces that come through. So that's why our content, I feel like, is a pretty good mix of both. Sometimes it leans one way or the other, and it kind of depends on what platform we're on of what we post. Like Instagram, that's really picture-y, so you don't usually do many blogs and stuff there, but you do bright colors and stuff. So.
Yeah, and you can take a portion of whatever's said in the blog and use it as the script for, or the message for your Instagram. I mean, I think, if you could deconstruct a blog post or a blog post, you could literally, use different portions, and each piece could be optimized for whatever the platform is. LinkedIn has its own kind of, what are people wanting from you there, and Instagram is more story type telling. But I like how you are able to grasp and do well with the different kinds of platforms, because they are so different. Most of the custom coders that focus in on automotive parts, of course, they thrive in the Instagram realm. But when you are doing other types of jobs, how do you balance that, And you guys do seem to do it pretty well, and you highlight those personal projects that you can maximize shock and awe on Instagram when you can, and then, and then utilize the LinkedIn for more technical stuff too. I mean, it's not an easy job to do, but you seem to do it very well. And but do you, now just to wrap things up, I mean, is there anything you'd like to see change in the industry, or do you see any trends changing in the industry or coming this way?
I think that just from the reading I've been doing, it seems like that we will be powder coating non-metal substrates. I mean, there's people that do it now, but it's not very widespread. I think that'll eventually someday in the next 5 to 10 years will become pretty common that, when someone does bring in their wooden cabinet or something that's brand new, we'll be able to powder coat it. So I think that that's like a technological advance that's coming. That'll be interesting. I'm excited for that. I think it's a little ways off for for a job shop like us to do that, because it'll probably start in a really big factory scale first. But and then the other thing is just I wish there were more technical reps available, just in all of the stuff we do, blasting, painting, and powder coating. There's always a lot of sales reps, and you have your favorite ones that you like to talk to, and you have the ones that you wish that they didn't show up because they are bothering you. I'm sure everybody has their favorites and the ones they don't like, but it usually seems like when you really have a technical question, whether it be about painting, powder coating, or blasting, if you're lucky enough, you've met one person along the way, one rep along the way that kind of knows everything pretty good. And so you can call them and ask them, and they can get you pointing in the right direction. But all your other reps usually, for whatever reason, they're like, I'm not sure, I'm going to have to call the lab or something. So I think that just comes from their sales reps. They're not technical reps. So I wish that there was more technical reps in the industry. I wish it was a little more even. Seems like there's a lot more sales reps than there are technical reps. And it's probably hard to find people that want to be a technical rep. They're usually actually working in production at a company. But
yeah,
I don't know if you found that the same, but sometimes it's hard when you're having a problem it's really hard to find someone to call to even just get a little bit of advice. Pretty much a lot of the time we feel like, well, it messed up, but we're just going to have to try something else and figure it out ourselves, which is fine. But sometimes it would be nice to have a wealth of information just to call on and say, like, hey, we've tried this 3 or 4 times. It's not working. Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think, well, we're in Hawaii, so I mean, getting anybody to come out here is just nearly impossible. We're lucky if we get a phone call or something or two from people. It's happening now more for us, email wise, and people are finding the site, just in terms of searches and stuff like that. So they're finding out about what we're doing and they'll reach out to us that way. But I agree with you. Yeah. It's something, maybe you're just in a centrally located area, so it's easy for people to drive up or contact you, or, you're in a hub area and stuff. I think that there are tech people out there that could answer those questions for you, but they're more in the consulting realm rather than working for the actual company that's providing the equipment, or the supplier that's providing the powder or the liquid or whatever, the materials. They probably are more focused on sales than tech. But yeah, it's nice to know if that a large company that you're buying equipment from has, where powder has that tech person you can go to. I mean, most of the time that we've called tech people, it's just plausible deniability. Well, you did it wrong. Yeah. Okay, well, how did I do it wrong? Well, you just did it wrong. Did you follow the directions on the application guide? Well, yes, I did several times, right. And it still came out wrong. It can be frustrating because it seems like even when you do find a tech person, they don't want to admit that their product failed. That's been our biggest frustration, especially when we've got a customer requesting a specific color. Happened to us earlier this year, and it didn't matter what we did or how we did it. It was wrong, and it's because they probably threw out a powder that was not quite ready for public use, and it's just, maybe they were driven to, that's not every powder supplier, but it just, when it rarely does happen, you get frustrated because you feel like, well, I'm buying all this from you and yet you're not supporting me or trying to help me in any way. So,
so with you guys being in Hawaii, is there powder coating manufacturers there, or when you go to order your powder, like, is it a pretty long lead time when you want to get a box of powder ordered in?
Well,
like shipping wise.
Yeah, everything about our business is based off shipping, in terms of what powders we supply, who we choose, and why we choose it. Shipping and humidity, pretty much, like, rules our life. And if it's equipment,
it's like in the contiguous 48, it seems like if we run out of powder quick, or faster, or we forgot to order something, usually, like, since we're in the middle of the United States, we're like a 2-day ship point from pretty much everywhere, or just regular ground, or we could just overnight it in. But for you guys, like, if you accidentally ran out of a powder, or something happened, or found a box was bad, and you had to get that same seller quickly, what is it like is that like
hell.
The fastest you can get it is 4 days, or?
Yeah, right. It's hell, because you almost have to anticipate that will happen when you're in a job, especially something like a huge gate or railing or architectural level. It's like, it's almost a paranoia that happens with us, because if we run out, I mean, earlier you were saying, because we're finishers, it's all on us to perform at the very end, despite all the failings and delays of a huge job. You still have to bring that in on a deadline. They're not going to give you any extra days because,
right.
Because they brought it in 5 days late, you know what I mean, kind of thing. So,
yep.
So basically, we have to almost anticipate over ordering powder, or be ready to jump on it if we know something's going to fall short, or be redone, or something. Who knows what the problem is. It's almost like you have to be paranoid about it, and just go ahead and, and then there is, okay, so say it's just basic gloss black, even, I have to go to 3 or 4 different suppliers, and then figure out, is it faster to ship USPS from Tennessee, or UPS from Illinois, or California, and it's different for every supplier, and it's different for every shipping method. So based on where it's at and where it's crazy, like some of the stuff I've had to do. I've had to order stuff, it came in faster from Tennessee than it did from California. Like, and you're like, what? So yeah, mastering logistics in Hawaii is a definite skill you have to have for running any kind of business here. The other thing is just the cost of equipment. Whatever, usually when you're in, the regular continuous states, it's always usually free shipping or very low price shipping, and it can arrive within a day or 2 or 5 days at the most. It's cost us just as much in shipping as it does for the equipment itself. Wow. It's absolutely crazy. I'll never forget, back in 2004, we were painters back then. We weren't even, we were just getting started with powder coating and learning about it. But we ordered our open face spray booth, cost $2,500, and it cost $2,500 to ship it. That's
wow.
a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard enough to keep up with project deadlines and customers, and then when you add that logistical wrinkle in, I mean, that would make it a lot more difficult. I can't imagine if we, because I always, like, if I have to overnight something, I will. Like, I don't want to, because it costs a lot of money to, it costs more to ship powder than it does for the material itself, but at least we have that option. But yeah, I can definitely understand what you're saying, where if you got a big project, you're just going to over order just in case we have to rework half of this. We better get the extra powder because we don't have any leeway on 2 days.
Fortunately, our customers are pretty understanding when it comes to charging them for powder, or, including powder, or, like making sure that we cover our ass on the powder expense, including shipping. We're doing a project for Oprah Winfrey, has been building her house here for frickin' forever. I think going on like 3 years now. And, of course, it's the typical, like, the spec calls for this or whatever, and then the designer doesn't like it, so then you're having to redo it and stuff like that. But generally speaking, like if we order powder for a job like that, we have maybe a minimum order, even if it's just a small thing, but they'll buy the powder, and we'll try to use as much as we can of it for that job. But then, pretty much it just stays here and we reuse it. I haven't really found any kind of way to reclaim that money back, or, we try to, if it then becomes an in-stock powder for us, I guess, a special order, if we have unused portions of it or pounds of it. And then we'll make it an in-stock color until we have no longer an in-stock color, you know what I mean, kind of thing. So
yeah, we do kind of the same thing for different reasons, I think. But yeah, we have pretty much a set stock colors that we have the samples hanging on the wall. And then if someone's like, oh, I don't like any of those and I want to special order something, I'm like, okay, that's fine. But like, we buy usually 50-pound box minimum. So if you want to do that, you're gonna have to pay for the whole box of powder. And some people are like, no problem, I'll do that. And then other people are like, that's cost way too much, I'll just pick one of your stock colors. So
yeah, I think one of the frustrations about customers' own merchandise, COM, I call it COM, is, like the incident we had earlier this year where we had a difficulty and needed a tech rep for the powder supplier because we had problems with the application. I don't think we will ever do that again. I mean, I get that they bought their own, special transparent or illusion color from XYZ company or whatever. I appreciate that. That's good for you. But I don't know how old you've been sitting on that powder. I don't know where you bought it from. You could have bought it on eBay from a second-hand seller, third-hand seller. I mean, like, there's just too many variables, and I just kind of had to put an end to it because there's just too many pitfalls with that, So you pretty much have to buy powder from us.
We don't let anybody bring in their own, because just like what you said, you don't know how long it's been sitting there, and usually they don't have the data sheets with it, and we try to have an SDS for everything on file just in case. And so we usually don't let people bring in their own powder, because a lot of the time, even if we had one not too long ago, they brought in a really low gloss black, and that's the one they wanted, and I was like, we don't spray other people's powders. We use our own. We have our own flat black. It's going to match just the same. I'm like, oh, I just really want you to use ours. I'm like, well, I understand it looks like it's the exact same color, so you think we might as well just use yours, but it could spray out totally differently. For some reason, it might not like the pre-treatment we put underneath it, and we just know that our flat black, that we hold it up here, so it is the same color. We know how we need to process ours, what film thickness we need to put it on at, what spray settings we need to use. We can just give you a better product if we use what we know, as long as and if it's going to look the same, we'd rather just use ours. So that's how we try to approach it usually.
Well, yeah, I mean, you get used to it, it's consistency, how to, it's, I mean, you just know what you can stand behind. And I don't know what it is about, like, these celebrities on Maui. I don't know. It just seemed like all the incidences we have, we had this thing, we just did some stuff for Mick Fleetwood from Fleetwood Mac. Yes, he's retired here. He owns a restaurant. It's a very good restaurant. Actually, it's very popular here in Lahaina. And he wanted these light sconces for his garden, I guess. And he ordered them from the mainland, and they were powder coated, very well made. I guess they make their own light sconces and then they powder coat them as well. But he got them done, but for whatever reason, they didn't. That's right. He thought he could just order whatever color he wanted. And when we went to match the stock on this and called the lighting company to say, what color are you using? We found ourselves into a bit of a pickle because the sample that was sent from the lighting company, they use a box feeder, and instead of the hopper. And because this powder had a metallic flake in it, guess what? All the metallic flake floated to the bottom. And so when they sprayed the color, you didn't see the metallic, and he liked that because it was more muted. But then when we got the same exact color from the same exact supplier and we applied it, we use the hopper, which kind of keeps the metallic floating. And it came out looking different than, so then he didn't like that. And we're like, well, what do you want us to do? We just literally ordered the same exact thing that these people are doing, so it was kind of strange. That was a new one for us, a new pitfall in powder coating. Even with
metallics are always challenging.
Yeah. Well, it's been great talking to you. Thanks for joining us today, Jase. So how can coders get a hold of you? We talked about your blog, but would you like to throw out maybe an email or a website?
Our website is Kazer, Kaser, blasting.com. And then on all the social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, if you search Kazer Blasting and Coatings, will come up. And then on LinkedIn, we have a Kazer Blasting and Coatings, but most of it just gets posted on my personal LinkedIn, Jase Kaser, Jase Kaser. So you can find us there. I won't list off my email, but I think it's on our website somewhere. If you just have a question, feel free to give us a call. We'll try to help. If you can't figure it out from all the content that we have out there, definitely call us.
Yeah.
And we'll try to help you.
Again, definitely head over to the Kazer website and find that blog. I found it refreshing. I found it insightful. I found it educational for sure. And I appreciate you coming out on the show today very much and taking the time to talk with us and get to know you, Yeah,
it was nice to get to know you too. I really appreciate you having us on here. We've been wanting to do some more podcast stuff. We haven't, this is the first one I've actually been on, but we've been talking about it a lot. So we were happy when you emailed us, and thank you. It's interesting to learn about the challenges that you have in Hawaii that I would never think of because just locationally, there's a lot of differences. So it was interesting.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'd like to thank our supportive followers and fellow powder coaters out there. I hope you've learned something new about your powder coating business. Please comment below, follow us, or share this podcast. Have a great day. Aloha.